Hey there, Groovesters. Ridgely here with another Groove Growth program, and I am so excited to welcome a very dear friend to talk about a subject that men and women need to really understand, which is the principles of feminine leadership and what that looks like. Fantastic coach, consultant, mentor, amazing all-around individual, Amy Walker. Thank you so much for joining the Groove Growth community this morning. I'm so excited to learn what I need to know about the principles of feminine leadership.
Well, I'm so appreciative of you inviting me on and having this conversation. You know, sometimes we take the needs of a specific group and we say, well, that's just their conversation to have, when in reality, we want our companies to be as productive and as profitable as possible. And we need men and women both being able to contribute and last in the corporate environment. And right now, there are so many women that are burning out. So you've got like very, very talented, brilliant, capable women who are leaving the workforce, which means they're either starting their own businesses or they're available to contract inside of your business. And you can get better talent now than I think you've been able to get in the past, because a lot of women have left corporate in the last couple of years, like thousands and thousands across the world. It's crazy.
And how do you, so I'm super interested in this. And I think many in the Groove community, obviously we have many budding entrepreneurs, people starting their companies, using the Groove platform to put their message out to the world, whether that includes selling a service or selling a product or simply expressing a vision. And so many of us need more help.
Yes.
And in my mind, oftentimes men are very linear, whereas women are capable of doing much more. How can we tap into that? Well, what do we do? What do we need? What do we, the men, need to know? And what do the women need to know to take advantage of this situation?
Well, the first thing we have to understand is that the way that we do business is a system that was built by men for men. It was not really built for women, and women have never really fit there in a sense that our feminine energy and our natural leadership capabilities have a space. And so as women have stepped into business and they've stepped into entrepreneurship, they've tended to have to go into a very masculine version of themselves. And we all have masculine and feminine energy, but we shift into this masculine workflow, which then causes burnout. We are not built to do the same thing every single day. Like, we don't operate on a 24-hour hormone cycle, a 24-hour chemical cycle, a 24-hour any cycle, but men do. And so you do really well with having this kind of like, this is when I get up, this is when I work, this is how I do it, and then I'm done. Whereas women, we flow. And so we have a lot of movement in our energy levels throughout the day and in like the different decades and seasons of our lives and different hormone cycles. Our brain chemistry actually changes throughout the month. And so our cognitive abilities shift and change throughout the month, which means we are really, really brilliant and capable leaders because we can do empathy, we can do high energy, we can do deep thinking and analysis, we can do all of these different things, but we don't necessarily do them in a set 9 to 5 structure. It's like different times of the month or different times of even the day, we will go up and down in our energy levels. So if we can understand the needs that we have as women, we can set up our businesses in a way that we're not experiencing so much burnout. We're not doing this whole push, hustle, which, by the way, I don't love the hustle culture for entrepreneurs, for men or for women. I don't think it's the best way for us to go. But specifically for women, it's really detrimental. And yet there's this whole culture around entrepreneurship of like, we've got to hustle, we've got to have drive, we've got to do all of these things. When in reality, we create magic quite often through relationships, through connection, through attraction. So when we're in this force, this push mode, we're not actually tapping into what our natural abilities are and what our natural magic is, which is that I can be still and create more movement around me than when I'm in a hustle energy. I attract amazing opportunities to me. And through the relationships that I have, I can open up massive amounts of doors. But it's an interesting thing because historically speaking, women have always been community builders, right? Like we've been the ones who are gathering the tribe together, and we're, creating the way that things run in a very mastermind community type way. But for some reason, when we stepped into business, we stopped doing that. And I think it's because there wasn't very many spots for us. And so over the last, 40 years, it's been like, I got to do it alone because maybe I'm the only one in this position, or I've got to do it alone because if there's too many women, then maybe I will lose my spot. But that's really not the case in entrepreneurship. And so it's like we took, our whole history and millennia of women's psychology and how we create, and then we stepped into this really masculine way of being in corporate. And now that we're stepping back into entrepreneurship, it's like we need to relearn what we historically already knew and we're historically already doing in order to really create magic. Because if you are a woman, or you've got a woman on her team and you will allow her to lead in her feminine energy, oh my gosh, can we create amazing things? We can creatively find solutions to things that I don't know. I'm a mom of 5 boys. So I'm telling you, my purse is magical. Any problem that comes up, I'm like, let me see what I got and let me figure out what we can do. And we'll solve this problem right here. Like, we're super good at problem solving. We're really good at bringing people together. We're really good at culture. We are really good at creating that one relationship that can open up doors to hundreds and thousands of people. But we just need to allow ourselves to flow a little bit differently, and not force, but invite. It's a different energy. It's a different vibe that we bring to the table.
So let's talk about this, because at least I would rank myself up there in the absolute clueless men department, right? Like when you talk about, I completely follow you when it comes to the idea of there weren't that many spots for women, so we had to step into that spot, and now we're having to relearn. And I guess on behalf of the men and maybe some of the women who need to relearn this, what does that mean, and how do we do that? How can we embrace what you're talking about? Because it feels very beautiful. It feels very rich and very full, but I have no clue how to do this, and I want to know.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually co-authoring a book with Dr. Monica Ogando called The 7 Principles of Feminine Leadership. And so these are principles that they can be built into the culture of the company, and then they will create a beautiful environment where women can thrive. But it's not like they're bad for men either. We really can create a culture that it's more inclusive, and it's going to basically pull from the talents of both the masculine and the feminine so that we can just come out stronger. So I'll share my 7 principles here, and you can pause me at any point in time. We can talk through these. But I think that
after each one, so I can really make sure
yeah,
that at least
awesome.
the clueless men get some kind of a clue.
Awesome. So the first principle is 100% is possible 100% of the time. And the reason why we worded this one this way is because so many women have additional obstacles that men don't have. So when you look at, the standard American home, most families, both the man and the woman are working. And yet in the majority of homes, the woman still carries what's called the mental load. So she still is the one that holds the calendar in her mind, that knows when the bills need to be due, that is the primary caregiver for both her parents and her children. And so we have a lot of obstacles. And for many women, we let these obstacles stand as stumbling blocks in our path to success. And so we tend to go through entrepreneurship with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brakes. Like, we want growth, but we can't have it too fast because then it would be too much, and then we can't manage everything else that's in our life. And so by shifting the mindset around that and saying 100% is possible 100% of the time, it allows us to activate that creative thinking part of our brain, which is so wonderfully brilliant, to be able to find solutions. So I remember, I'll give you an example. When I was starting my business, I was 6 weeks away from having my 5th son. I had an 18-month-old. I had a kindergartner, a 2nd grader, and a 5th grader. My husband was working nights and he was going to school during the day. Not an ideal time to start a business when you're a speaker. And I'm like, I literally can't go anywhere to speak because I'm, tied to babies and life and family. And I kept seeing all of my obstacles popping up in front of me. And one day I was like, Amy, don't tell me what you can't do. Just tell me what you can. what can you do to build this business? And that's when it was like, I could do webinars, I could do online summits. And you know, Ridgely, because you've been on our summits, that's a big part of how we have run our business ever since. And it still works really well for me because it doesn't take, I'm not traveling on the road all the time. 4 of my 5 kids are still at home and they still like me. So I want to be here. So that thought process of 100% is possible 100% of the time will help us to find solutions that work for us while we are acknowledging that, yeah, we have some challenges. You know, I've been caregiver for my grandmother. I've been caregiver for my children. I will probably in the next couple of years be caregiver for my mother. Like that, there are extra additional challenges that I want in my life. I don't want to say no to those or push them off to somebody else. I want to embrace them. And yet, I want to be really successful in business. So it helps us to kind of take that foot off of the brakes a little bit and allow us to feel like we can move more freely towards what we want.
And how can we, so I love that 100% is possible 100% of the time. What a fabulous, abundant mindset to embrace. How can we, those who are inviting female leadership into our organizations, help to support that?
So embracing that principle yourself will pull more talent out of your top people anyway. And you know, it's interesting. We talk about being in the hiring crunch right now, that it's been harder for companies to hire than ever before, but there's more talented people available than ever before. But the challenge is they are no longer willing to play by the old rules. So you need to get creative about those rules. Millennials and Gen Z, they're not looking for a full-time job. They're just not. They don't want to be in an office from 9 to 5 every single day. What they want is something where they can give the best that they've got, create the results that you need, and then they want the freedom and flexibility to live their life. And so if our corporate structure is real rigid, like our expectations are super rigid, you're going to have a hard time retaining younger talent and female talent, which I think most organizations want both. So just being willing to embrace that and say, okay, you know, you've got this challenge going on at home. You're needed more there, but you still feel like you can give what we need. And we just need to be flexible with what that delivery looks like. How can we make this work? If 100% is possible, how can we make it work so we get our needs met, you get your needs met, and we can still continue to create something great together?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because the global marketplace has facilitated some of that, right? At
Mhm.
Groove, we have team members almost in every time zone around the world.
Yeah.
Maybe not 24 time zones, but we certainly have team members in Western Europe, team members
Yep.
in Eastern Europe, team members in the Middle East, team members in Southeast Asia, and of course,
Hmm.
all across the Americas. So we have to have a little bit of that openness to understanding that, hey, when you're sleeping, they're creeping. And when
Yep.
you're creeping, they're sleeping and whatever. And maybe there's some crossover there, but adapting to that, I think, at least from a theoretical perspective, has been successful. I think that more what is needed from what you're saying is more of a mindset perspective of really
Hmm.
embracing that and saying, no, no, this is a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
Let's pull in the beauty and take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting, you know, I have team members all over as well. I'm not suggesting that everybody gets to do whatever the heck they want and there's no parameters. I'm just suggesting that when you look at it and say immediately, nope, that can't be done, that you pause and you say, well, how could that be done? And would this be in our best interest? And how could that be even better than this? And look for the possibility, because that's where innovation happens, is in that zone of 100% is possible 100% of the time.
You know, it's interesting. I do a lot of work. It's just crazy how you find these little pockets, right, in the world. And one of my best clients is the Regional Chamber of Commerce of Toledo, Ohio. Now they're
Nice.
one of the they're out of 1,500 chambers across the country. They're in the top 5%. They've really crushed it. I mean, they're more successful than the much bigger cities in Ohio for whatever the reason. And I always stay at the same hotel. And when I go, and I'm there 2 or 3 times a year, and when you go into the bathroom, there's a sign that says, actually, the glass is never half empty. It is always 100% full, either of
Hmm.
water or of air. And it's like,
Right.
okay, so, and I love that. I love that mindset of it's always 100% full. How do we, how do
Yeah,
we embrace more of that, which is what you're talking about with your first principle?
absolutely. And so I'll share with you the second principle here because I think this one builds off of it, which is growth can be fast and fun. So there is a real difference when I coach men versus women, where I don't have to really spend a lot of energy getting men to take that one foot off the brake. It's like they just need to know how to put the foot on the gas and then they're ready to go. Whereas with women, there is a lot of hesitation around growth. And I have gone through this myself. Like, had I known how to get rid of this earlier, my business would be 10 times the size that it is. But we have this tendency to want growth to be very, very manageable. And also, we tend to do a lot ourselves. So when you look at companies run by men versus run by women, women tend to hire slower than men do. They tend to hold on to the responsibilities longer. And that's why growth becomes hard. And so then, and this is not a specific problem to women, only men do this as well. But we look at our business and we think, do I really want to create more growth? Because it's so freaking hard as it is. I'm working my guts out. Like, why would I want more of this? Maybe I'll just, stay the same and try to find ways to be more profitable within what we're doing so we don't have to push harder. But there's this interesting thing that happens where there's a breaking point where once you get to the other side, it's actually less work. One of my goals this year at the start of the year was I want to make twice as much and work half as much. And I knew that me working half as much was part of the equation for us to be able to work twice as much because I was in too many areas of my business. And so that embracing that idea that growth can be fast and it can be fun, it does not have to be hard. It doesn't always have to be that push masculine energy. It can be the feminine flow and the feminine receive, and allow ourselves to be able to get where we want to go with a little bit less pain and torment.
It's so interesting you would say that. So I have two thoughts on that. First of all, in Groove Growth, I'm blessed because I think, we've talked about this. I speak a lot on the CEO circuit. So I have literally dozens and dozens of CEO friends. And I've invited them to come to Groove Growth and share lessons from the CEO. And as I've been doing many of these, one of them that comes up is don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Spend a little money to expand yourself. Be ahead of the curve. Playing catch up is really, really hard. And I noticed everything has, like you were talking about earlier, a little bit of a cycle. And you have to be somewhat forward thinking. Like, this is just such a silly, goofy example, but I'm sure Groove Growth people will understand this. I'm going to Mexico in July. Next month, I'm going to Mexico, not for a little while, for 18 days.
Awesome.
And being 18 days away from your normal routine, your business, your thing is a substantial commitment. So I put it in my mind, I want to be ahead of the curve with the Groove Growth program so that things are all lined up and everything is taken care of and people are receiving the nurturing care that they need for their personal growth. And at the beginning, it was not so easy.
Yeah.
I had to figure out, what does that look like? Why is this like herding cats? How come successful people don't want to be heard by 500,000 people in the Groove Growth community? Well, all that stuff, right? And now, after 6 months, it's like a piece of cake. I book. I get to have these fabulous conversations with people such as you, sharing amazing wisdom for the community. And you can get ahead of the curve. Where I was going with this, to where now it's easy. And when I started, it was hard. Now, if somebody's hard, I kind of just kick them out. Like, no, you're going to be difficult about this. I'm really not interested in having you on. If you have a beautiful message to share, bring it. Let's do it. But if you're going to be a pain, go somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we should really look at and monitor as well, is if not all growth is good for you. So if the growth is not fast and fun, maybe it's the wrong growth opportunity for you. Maybe those are some signals that, and I'm not saying, like, for me to get to the point where I'm working half as much in my business took a lot of work, more than I thought it was going to, right? Like, that was a harder transition than I imagined it to be. But it's speeding up the growth down the road. So there are seasons where you do push, but it needs to land in something that flows. And I think that balance of the two, of knowing that there you expend and then it needs to come back to you. And some people like pursue the hardest path possible in business and continue to do that over and over again without ever looking at it and going, why is this so hard? And how could this be easier?
You know what I did? So funny, because this is like hilarious. But one of the things that I realized is really hard in online marketing is managing joint venture relationships. It's really, really hard. And I've noticed a few of my very successful friends have adopted a little bit of a different model. We recognize the incredible value of JVs, but we're only going to do this with people that make it easy.
Uh-huh.
And I've taken that as well. And now JV relationships are not hard, because if they're hard, I'm not interested.
Right. We have a list.
Yeah.
We keep a list of people we will never work with.
That's right. I call that the life's too short list.
Yeah.
And if you hit the life too short list, I'm sorry. I wish you the very best. Go on your merry way. I don't need to be weird or strange about it, but just not interested. So, and you figure these things out, I think, with a little bit of maturity and wisdom. One of the things I was thinking about also is growth. So building on the 100% is possible 100% of the time, and growth can be fast and fun, is that notion that so many entrepreneurs are like in scarcity mode and scared mode. Oh, I got to run like a maniac. I got to be like the hamster on the wheel, because or else somebody's going to pass me by, and yada, 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 yada. As opposed to, what about having a long-term perspective and just incrementally eating the elephant one bite at a time, learning what you need to do to get to the next thing, and then to the next thing, and then understanding that if you do that and you do the right thing, there are inflection points, right? That'll happen, that are crazy. So,
well, and one thing that I see happen quite often with entrepreneurs is that they repeat the first year of business 10 years in a row because they are too scared to make the second year decisions and commitments, right? So they won't make the first hire, they won't make the first investment, they won't do that next move that takes them to year 2 and then year 3 and creates the growth chain. And so they just continue. I mean, when I was doing a lot of live speaking before the pandemic, I would see the same people at the same events year after year, and their business was in the same spot. And I'm like, so how many years do you want to be in year 1? It's been a long time. Like, are we ready to go to year 2? Are we ready to make that next step? And I always tell my clients that it's not as hard as you fear it's going to be, but it is more work than you want it to be. And it's kind of somewhere in that zone of it's nothing like what you think it's going to cost you, but it's going to cost you. It's not going to be free. You're going to have to, put in some time and energy and sweat equity.
One of my favorite sayings, and I don't know where I got it. I'm one of those guys that has all these sayings that I got from somewhere. They're not original. Okay. They came from somewhere. Is the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary.
That's not even true there. No, yes, it is. Success in work. Sorry. I was like, dictionary is a D. Oh, that's funny. That is true. Success does come before work in the dictionary. But yeah, but it doesn't have to be unpleasant. And I think this is one of my big lessons that I've learned, is that I need to create success that is good for me, not success at the expense of me. And for so many years, because I had the demands of all of the little kids and my husband and extended family and community and church responsibilities and business, it was like I was putting everything else first. And then I was putting me kind of last and not fitting into the cracks. And so I had a year where we had a phenomenal year in business, most profitable year ever. And I was so burnt out at the end of it. Like, looking at growth for the next year was not even fun. And I realized, I was like, okay, I'm growing the wrong way. If this is what growth and success feels like, it's not the right way. It's not the right way for me. Which is another one of my principles of feminine leadership, is that you need to grow your business in alignment with your personal values. And what a beautiful thing that entrepreneurship gives us the permission to do, because we get to make up our own rules. Like, if it's our company, we get to set the values. And we need to make sure that whatever we value on paper is actually the way that our lives are aligned. Because I know a lot of women that value things like empowerment and self-care, and then they never do it. Or
Mm.
they value children and family and relationships. And when was the last time they went out with their friends? Because they're not taking that time to plug in. And this is not a gender thing, but I will say more women tend to have a higher need for emotional intimacy. And so when we are behind the laptop all the time, living that laptop lifestyle, we miss out on the emotional intimacy that we do need in order to thrive. So you've got to align your work with your values to make sure that you're creating something that you can really go the distance with and you're not going to burn out.
Yeah, right. And I think that is so important. And I remember Jim Rohn used to talk about that all the time, that you have to design your own life, because otherwise you're going to find yourself in someone else's design.
Yeah.
And guess what they have designed for you? Not much. Was his final two words were not much, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I love work. I love my work, but I'm a burst worker. In other words, I burst. I know we're bursting until July 20th. I'm getting on an airplane. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to burst until the next holiday thing, whatever. And it's generally about 10 weeks or so. I burst for 10 weeks and then go for 2, and burst for 10, go for 2. I love that because I'm always looking forward to 75 days from now or so.
Yeah.
And then it's 50 days, and then it's 40 days, and then 30 days. And therefore, it's never hard for me to work hard.
Yeah.
And I find myself enjoying that because I know that that's my rhythm. But it didn't happen by accident. It happened by thinking about it, by, okay, how do I organize this? How do I sort it out to be able to make this a possibility? And if somebody were to say to me, what is happiness to you? Then I've defined that for myself. Happiness in my world is 1 month snorkeling with my beautiful wife, 1 month on the ski slopes, and 10 months in service to others. That's it. That's all I need. I don't need anything but that. Once in a while, a bucket list trip. But if I'm doing my month of snorkeling, month of skiing, 10 months in service to others, I'm fulfilled and free and just living day by day.
Yeah. And see, depending on the phase of life you're in, you want different things. And this is where you've got to get alignment with your values, right? Like for my life right now, that would be so stressful because either I have to find somebody to manage all the kids or I have to bring them all with me. Neither one is super relaxing. So for me, like my ideal flow and what works in alignment with my values right now is more of a marathon pace where it's like, I'm not going to run really fast, but I'm going to run really far in the distance. And then I'm going to take my rest. And so I need it's like a marathon pace through the day, and then there's rest, and then there's rest on Fridays, and then there's once a month a long weekend. And so it's like it's a lot, it's spaced differently, and that's the beauty, is that we can create what fits for us, but we have to listen to what our actual needs are. Because I can tell you, if I were to try to run at your pace, I would be exhausted before I ever got to the vacation. And then I would come home from the vacation feeling like I needed a vacation. And if you were to try to go at my pace, you would hit that, 2 months when you're ready to go on vacation again, and everything past your time frame would feel like torture. Like, why am I in this office still? I should be on the beach, right? So we have to be intentional with recognizing what our needs are and creating our workflow so that it honors our needs.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important lesson that you're sharing, Amy. It really is important to design your own life. Now, I got a question for you, a little bit of a sidebar, because here's another question that I think entrepreneurs fail to ask themselves. How much is enough? In other words, I'm super clear on my numbers. It's like, as soon as you hit this much recurring revenue in safe, secure things, real estate, stock market, whatever, passive investments, bonds, etc., you don't need anymore. Like, what's your number? What is the number? And at the end of the day, by the way, I have this big, huge philosophy, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole for too long, that assets don't matter. All that matters is flow. if you have enough flow, it doesn't matter what your assets are, as long as you have the flow. So I think one of the big questions that entrepreneurs kind of don't take enough time figuring out is, what's your number? At what point is there enough so that you could write a book, learn how to paint, plant a garden, participate more in the community, do something other than this pursuit of what that's not even defined?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting thing that I think is a little bit of a gender difference, is that men work really well towards a result and women need the reward during the work. Like the reward motivates us to move forward. So I used to do this a lot where I would say, okay, when I get to this point, then I'm going to give myself this time and everything on top of it is like bonus. And it didn't line up for me very well. So I totally hear what you're saying. And I do have that number when we're hitting a certain amount in like reoccurring revenue, then I feel the breath that comes off. But I couldn't align my life and my time that way, where it's like I'll work hard until that point. I have to work in flow and I have to allow myself that space all the way through. So here's an example. We were we had a property, we bought 10 acres, and then after 5 years realized we were not farmers and shouldn't probably have 10 acres, but it was really fun when the boys were little. And I had all these projects that I wanted to do. And I kept thinking, when I get to this point, I'm going to do these projects. And I kept getting more and more frustrated because we weren't progressing towards anything. And so I asked myself, like, why do I want to do these projects? Like, what's at the heart of it? Why does this matter to me? And it was, I wanted quality time with my family. So one of our projects was I wanted to build this big, awesome outdoor space. So instead, we took camp chairs down by the creek and we built a little fireplace out there. And we spent every Sunday out there, making s'mores and roasting hot dogs and playing games at a little card table. And we got exactly what we wanted. But it was like, I don't have to earn that experience. That experience is what fuels me to earn. And so I think that it's the same end result, right? Like we need to know what that number is, but I think that we approach it a little bit differently. And that's good. It's good that we can look at that and say, well, what is the way that works for me the best in order to get there? And understanding that when we're running an organization, just because that's what works for us doesn't mean it's the same way that it shows up for everyone else on our team. And so if you can create the objective of where you want to get to, but then you release the how and you let your team get creative with how they're going to get to that point, you can create an environment for success that honors more people, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. And I'm loving everything we're saying, because we're exposing different perspectives to goals and dreams and flow and thing. And yours is very different than mine. And I think that's especially valuable to Groove members, because one of the things that I'm really strive to not turn into is some kind of a guru. What I'm all about is facilitating. I'm all about curating who can come and share more. It is not about Ridgely, and maybe not about Amy. It's just about this flow of curation of ideas and concepts that contributes to the value of the people that frankly, we're indoctrinating to a certain extent. We're constantly like, guys, let me tell you something about external success. It comes from internal success. You got to kind of work on yourself in order to get to the next level, to overcome the blocks, to do all this stuff. So we're constantly educated. Tap in, tap in, tap in. And what has happened since we started Groove Growth, which was literally at the beginning of this year, is that more and more and more people are tapping in constantly. And now the flow of messages back of, wow, that was amazing. I got so much out of this, was incredible. And that's why I love the fact that your perspective on most of what we've talked about is very different than mine.
Right.
And it's so broadening to hear this. It's just great.
Well, and this is not about Groove Grove, but I attended a big name digital marketing conference a couple of years ago. And it was so bro marketer culture. Like it was just so masculine. Every single thing was like this masculine construct and this masculine energy. And I came home feeling like, I loved the ideas, but I was having a hard time figuring out how to implement them for me, even though there were so many brilliant ideas. And I think that's why conversations like this are so valuable, because you've got a lot of women that are flocking to digital marketing right now. Like there are so many women flocking to entrepreneurship. Our numbers, and I can't think of them off the top of my head, it is astounding. We are starting businesses at a higher rate than ever before. So you have tons of women flocking through, but they're coming into this conversation that it's like they get it, but it doesn't quite seem to fit. And it only takes like 2 degrees of shifting the way you think about it. And then all of a sudden you're like, now I can see how I can fit this in. I just need a little bit of a different come from. And then it's like it clicks into place. So I just commend you for being open to having the conversation where we're like, oh, men and women are different. Good to know.
Well, not
We're
only
wired
do you know,
differently.
yeah, I want to know. I want to know because I want to be a better servant to the female community as well as the male community, but also to attract the right people that can complement what we know. Like, right, we probably make a pretty good team on a lot of things because I got a very different perspective than you do.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
want to be the person that's super embracive of that. Like, come on, show me something. Show me something I don't know. That'd be great. I am clearly in the lifelong learner category. I love that.
I love it.
So tell us what else you got for us. I know there's 7. You've given us 3 so far. Do we get any more?
Yeah, I'll go through the other ones just kind of quickly. So authentic vulnerability is the beginning of transformation. I run a podcast where we interview 6 and 7 figure entrepreneur women. And the number one thing that we hear, because we ask everyone the same question, what inner dragon have you had to slay on your path to success? And the number one thing we hear is imposter syndrome, that it is very common in successful women that no matter how far they go, there still is this part of them that feels like the struggle is the truth and the success is the temporary thing that is going to go away at some point in time. And so when we allow ourselves to get authentically vulnerable and be honest with, I'm a work in progress. I'm a really successful, really great work in progress, but a very big work in progress. That gives us permission to just play as we are. And I think that can be a really powerful one for a lot of women.
Yeah, I don't think that's limited to women, by the way. I think that we hear so much about developing an abundance mentality, shying away from scarcity. That is deep work. We are programmed to be scarce, to be scared, to be afraid, you're not worth it. Who do you think you are? All of those things. And it is, at least for me, one of those things that I'm constantly conscious of. It's like, whoa. Who are you to play small? Who are you not to succeed? Why in the world would you not be the one that gets to, in essence, flow more energy out into the world? Because at the end of the day, money is simply a form of energy, right? It's just flowing around. And some people flow a lot more of it than others. So why can't it be you? So that imposter syndrome thing, while I get it, women deal with it a lot. I think it's common to both genders.
It's super common. It's interesting though, the way that we express it is a little bit different. So I have a son, my 14-year-old, who if he ever feels underconfident, he compensates with overconfidence. And so he nicknamed himself Star Player when he was 12 in a Frisbee game with a bunch of 16-year-olds with his older brother's friends. He walks out and he's like, Star Player's here, who wants to be on your team? Like his way of processing is to lead with confidence until I gain the confidence. Whereas I watch my niece, who's the same age, and her way is to wait until she feels the confidence. And so I think this is an area where we really can, like, I watch my boys, I'm like, I'm learning from that. Like, exert the confidence first and let the confidence catch up instead of waiting until you feel like you have it in order to go out and claim it. So it shows up differently for everybody and everyone. Those are kind of 2 extreme examples on the spectrum. They're same age and so funny to watch together because they are opposites. But I think most of us kind of fall somewhere in that space. And it's a challenge that affects everyone. And I think you get to program your brain to rewire yourself to think of the success as the truth. Like whenever you see yourself winning, be like, this is the truth. This is really who I am. And when you see yourself struggling, to separate it from you and say, this is a temporary situation and it's going to change. Give me some time. I'll work on it. It's not, maybe not change yet, but it's going to get there.
You know, it's interesting. In Buddhism, we have a unique take on victory. And what we focus on is never be defeated, never give up. In other words, focusing on winning is great, but if you focus on never being defeated, you will.
Yeah, you will
win. And so it's a constant mantra: be like the lion. The lion is fearless. The lion is never defeated. And
I love that.
It's it's kind of a cool thing that we kind of glom onto. All right.
I love that.
4.
Okay, so lift as you climb is another one that if we want more women in the $1 million business category, we've got to bring other women along with us. The next one is wealth with purpose. We are not money motivated alone. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to that. A lot of people are in entrepreneurship because they're not money motivated alone. They're cause motivated. They have a drive and a desire that flows below it. But when our money when our money moves are really aligned with our core purpose, we work so much harder and we make so much more. Whereas when we're just focusing on numbers on the scoreboard, we tend to be okay with changing the timeline or changing the details of it. But when you align that purpose with it, it's like it locks into place and you're unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love both of those. By the way, lift as you climb is very important. I think that's kind of a bit of a forgotten art, especially in the entrepreneur world. There's so much, I got to do this myself. I got to, that there's a forgetting of, well, why don't you just bring a few people along for the ride? And then you have some people to enjoy those successes with. And oh, by the way, you have some people who can step in when they're needed or something happens to you. I'm just such a huge believer in that. I love my team. It's a very small team, which compared to Groove, for example, which is a very large team. But my team is tight, and we do stuff together, and we hang out together, and we love hanging out together. And it's like it's a cool thing. Everybody on the team loves the team.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and one of the ways that this shows up for me that I really do is I refer a lot of people to a lot of people. So whenever a door opens for me as a woman in business, I consider it my responsibility to hold the door open and invite a few more women in. So when I get invited to speak at an event and I see that there are not very many Black speakers, I'm not a jerk about it, but I'll just say, hey, I noticed there's not a lot of diversity in the lineup. I know some really phenomenal African-American speakers. Would you like an introduction? And almost always they're like, yeah, like they hadn't realized that they were lacking in diversity and they're grateful for the recommendation. Or if there's a stage where there's not, I mean, it's mostly men and there's just like a couple of women splattered here and there, and I'm one of them, I'll say, hey, I noticed that your ratio of men to women is not quite in balance. I know phenomenal female speakers. Would you like some introductions? And I think men, you could do that too. Like if you notice that you're in a stage and you're like, where's all the women here? You could just say, hey, I noticed you didn't have as many women speakers this year. I know some great ones. If you're planning for next year, I'd love to introduce you. But being able to create more opportunities and pass them along as well. I mean, anytime I go on a podcast, I'll say, are you looking for any other guests? I know some really great ones. Anytime I speak at an event, they book me. I'm like, so are you still looking for speakers? I know some great people. It's the whole principle of when you go to the airport and you stack the bins while you're waiting for your thing to come through. Like everybody just leaves their bins. I'm like, I'm standing here anyway. It takes me no extra time or effort to just stack the bins and make it nicer for the people coming along. That's what I think we get to do for each other in business is promote other people. And here's the thing, as you do that, your amount of people who are out there in the world promoting you dramatically increases because you've done it for them. And it is such a, I don't know if it's karma or relationships or what, but I'm telling you, it comes back to bless your business as well.
Well, for sure, send them my way because we're always looking for more powerful women. And I couldn't concur more. I get a lot of juice because multiple times every single month, I'm bringing incredible people together to share
Mm-hmm.
and to serve. And then it comes back so much. Hey, can you come over here? Can you join me over there? Can you do this thing? I mean, I don't want to say that I'm lazy about marketing my speaking. I'm going to say that I do absolutely nothing to market my speaking, zero, except hang out with super cool people. And
Uh-huh.
I will get called and I get
Yeah.
called and I get called. So much so that I don't really want to speak any more than I'm already speaking because the opportunities just keep flowing as a result of inviting other people to be
Yeah.
successful. Share.
Yeah, it's amazing the power of lift as you climb. It will make everything in your business easier. So that collaboration, that helping each other, because every person that you help turns into one more person that's helping you. And it very rarely takes more time and effort to promote somebody else. I mean, you're already in that space, the door's already open for you. Maybe it's because we both live in the South, but literally you just hold the door open for the next person. Like it's not hard to do. You wouldn't, I mean, if you lived in the South and you didn't hold the door open for the next person, you'd be getting the stink eye, right?
Yeah.
It's just what we do.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yesterday, I was on a call with one of our team members, and a team was supposed to do a bunch of stuff that needed to be done, but it wasn't like an urgent situation or whatever. And I got a quick call saying, "Hey, we got something that's come up. Can we push back our meeting a couple days?" And da 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 da. I was like, "Sure, no problem. Well, let me just make sure we're on the same page here." Yada yada yada. And I ended the call by saying, "And is there anything at all that I can do for you?"
Mm-hmm.
And the person said, "Ridgely, no, you already do so much." And I thought, wow, that's a nice thought. I'm glad they feel that way because I
Uh-huh.
was sincerely asking, hey, what can I do to help? What else can I do? And that spirit of service, I can't even express how many dividends that pays, not
Mm-hmm.
only in the physical material world, in the way that I feel about how I
Yeah.
conduct my day. Who else can I serve? What else can I be a part of that helps others? It's just so much joy that comes from and emanates from that place.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Okay, so I think we're on the seventh principle here, and this one is time freedom. Now, I know that everybody wants time freedom, but I will say we require it. We really do have to have time freedom. And it's not that my time is free. My time is actually very spoken for, from about 5 a.m. until about 9 p.m. at night. And then I get a little time where it's nobody needs anything from me, but my time is very spoken for. I need the freedom to be able to completely control how that time gets organized in order to fit in all of the responsibilities that are on my plate. And so, in a lot of corporate structures, let's start corporate and then we'll bring it back into entrepreneurship. In a lot of corporate structures, there aren't enough women that are progressing past a certain level, and there's not enough women in the C-suite. And one of the reasons why is because what they gain in increase in income, they lose in time freedom. And so a lot of women in the corporate world will get to a certain point and they will say, the money I would make is not worth the time freedom that I would lose. So I'm just going to stay here. And what we get to do in entrepreneurship is we get to really take control over our time. The challenge becomes for so many female entrepreneurs is that when we leave corporate, we step into entrepreneurship, we give the control of our time to different people, and then we're still not in control of our time. And so we're saying yes to all of the things that all of the people need. Like while we've been talking, I had a kid walk in and look at me, and I just I gave him, we have a sign where under my table, I wave my finger no, and then they go back out. But that sort of thing happens all day, every day, especially while the kids are home from summer. Neighbors need things, family needs things, and we allow other people to control our time in the spirit of thinking we're being generous. And it is very, very powerful to really take hold of your time and say, this is my time. I'm going to use it intentionally. I'm going to do exactly what I want to do today. And I'm going to serve the world in the exact way that I'm called to serve. And when that time is done, then I'm closed. Like, I'm done. I've given what I'm going to give, and that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I could not possibly agree more. And I don't have small kids anymore, so I don't have that distraction. But I am brutal with my time freedom. Brutal. I'm like, no, I'm not available. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
I'm not available. You want to talk to me? Great. Then you can look at my calendar for tomorrow or the next
Yep.
day or whatever, because I don't have any more bandwidth today. It's full.
Mm-hmm.
And full means that I have this half an hour to go for a walk, or I have this piece of time that I'm going to yoga class, or I have this time to do my spiritual practice or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That means it's full. There's no
Right.
more space. And uh, I've gotten very clear on the need to be selfish or self empowered, whatever you want to call it, to be able to say that. No, I'm just simply not available. Sorry. You want to talk to me? Like, sometimes I have to say to somebody, I can talk to you at the end of the month
Yeah.
and not before. And sorry. And the feeling of empowerment that you get from owning that space. It's like, no, 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 no. My life is also important, at least to me. And without me, there is no me. So I guess that's kind of like goes together somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I tell myself is that every time I say yes, I'm saying no to something else. And so before I say yes, I think of what would I be saying no to. So by saying yes to doing this interview with you today, I said no to taking my kids or my dogs to the vet, which I was okay with that trade-off. I was totally good to have Steven take the dogs to the vet. I think I won in this one. But other times I'll look at it and I'll say, okay, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? I'm saying no to my personal time. I'm not okay with that. I'm saying no to my family time. I'm not okay with that. I'm saying no to doing, a proactive task because I'm saying yes to this like reactive response that everyone wants my time right now. I'm not okay with that. So it is critical that you build your business around time freedom, but that you understand that the way that you get freedom is that you embrace structure. So structure is the mother of freedom. And if you have no freedom, if you have just chaos, then you are a slave to your chaos all of the time. So I think it's a mixture of embracing that relationship with time, embracing your responsibility, your stewardship over time, and then learning how to partner with time to create more than you could possibly do on your own efforts alone.
Totally. So let's just end on this one thing. And because we kind of glazed over it, and I'm glad we did, because I like coming back to this as a way of kind of wrapping up today and then talking about the future. And that is wealth with a purpose.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you view that and offer us a take that we could, look at, taking that coat and putting on and wearing it for a little while.
Yeah, so there's different things that motivate each of us. Some of us are motivated by the short term, some of us are motivated by the altruistic, some of us are motivated by safety and security. My husband's very safety and security minded. When the pandemic hit and you couldn't buy toilet paper anywhere, I was like, I got a basement full of toilet paper because he's been stockpiling for years, right? Like, he is a Mr. always prepared for any disaster. So that's what motivates him, is to feel like he is safe and secure no matter what's going on. I am motivated by impact and influence. I don't need to be on the front stage where everyone's like, oh, that's the person who did this. I prefer to have my impact and influence where my clients are out there doing super amazing things and I can see like my handiwork behind it and nobody else needs to know. But that's what really motivates me, is impact and influence, play and fun, and relationships and time freedom. So those are my four things. If I take any one out of the equation and it's not in play in my life and in my business, I will be less successful. So if I haven't had fun in a while, we haven't just gone and done something that's super playful and high energy and lots of times high adventure, then my creativity starts to droop. If I'm not giving back in the community and I'm not creating impact and seeing the ripple of my waves that I'm making a difference, then my motivation goes down. If I don't have my connection in my relationships times, then I get so into my headspace that I overwork and I get physically fatigued. And so there's like a recipe for each of us that our wealth is building that aligns with our purpose. And we need to make sure it's there on the front and the back. So a lot of times we think of it in the end, like, okay, well, my purpose is I'm going to make more money to buy my family's dream house. Right now, one of my big goals is I really want a lake house. So, that can be the purpose, but that's the end purpose. And if I don't also look at the beginning purpose, then I get off track and I have a tendency to not hit those financial goals. But when I have both the end, like what am I doing with the money and how am I earning? What's the purpose, the attention behind how I run the business to earn the money? Then that's where I really feel like it clicks into place. And I will tell you, I firmly believe that stepping into wealth is the best thing that you can do for the planet. I have a lot of connections that I've made because of my skills in business within my community, where I got a call a couple of weeks ago, and this woman who runs a government agency that coordinates all of the nonprofits in her community. And she said, we have a problem right now and I don't quite know how to fix it, but I feel like you could help. And I was like, okay, what's going on? She said, the elderly people that are in public housing are no longer able to clean for themselves. So they're failing their cleaning checks. In public housing, you get evicted if you can't pass your annual cleaning check. Nobody wants to evict the elderly. We don't have any government funded assisted living in our area. They don't have families. There's nowhere else for them to go to. That's why they're here. We don't know what to do. And it was like, all of my skills in business, I don't have all the answers, but I know how to bring together all the people with the answers. I know between her and I, she has the connections to the organizations and I have the organizational ability. And like, this is a problem that we can solve. So when we step into a space of really being at our best and making as much money as we can, it's not always about the money that's in our bank. It's about the wealth and the relationships that are in our bank and in our bank that then we can give and invest in other causes and other projects so that we can be difference makers. I truly believe that if you brought enough brilliant, heart-centered entrepreneurs together in one space for long enough, we could solve all the problems in the world. Because we're great problem solvers. And so you going after, whoever's listening, I'll just tell you this, you going after wealth and just claiming the purpose behind how you want to create it and what you want to do with it, it is the best thing you could do for the world.
I totally agree 100%. And I encourage all Groovesters and Groove Stars that are out there to do it. Go for it. You deserve it. You deserve it, especially when you take the proper steps. So Amy, I'm so excited. And tell us again, the title of the book is
When Women Lead, 7 Principles of Feminine Leadership.
Amazing. So Groovesters, if you see a button below this, it's because the book is out. If the button is not there yet, it's because the book's not out yet, but it's coming. And when it does come out, Stephen, probably, who's really good at these kind of details, is going to send me an email, right? So I make sure I hit that button down below.
Absolutely.
So until then, listen to these principles that Amy has shared with us again and again. There were so many of them. I actually took the time in my very sophisticated recording mechanism that I have right here. See, right? It's very
sticky notes.
Sticky notes of talking about 100% is possible 100% of the time. Growth can be fast and fun. Grow in alignment with your personal values. The need for authenticity and vulnerability. Lift as you climb. Wealth with a purpose. And the need for time freedom. So all of those things, super, super valuable. Amy, I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of the Groove community. We appreciate your wisdom. We can't wait to read the book. So please make sure we get that. As soon as that book's available, we need to know about it.
I will. I'm excited to get it done. We're working in the final stages of editing, but oh man, it's been It's been a long time coming and I can't wait to get it out.
Well, thank you again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The entire Groove community says thank you very much. Amy Walker, such a amazing, amazing program today where we learn a lot about feminine leadership and what the men can learn from that also. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.